welcome Eireann, Policy Officer for the Scottish Trade Union Congress. Eireann, ex-member of Scottish Youth Parliament, and have been involved in a range of campaigns affecting young people, fighting the end to zero-hour contracts, improving housing conditions, championing issues that concern young people's mental health. And I did read that you were kind of central to banning the mosquito device, which, if people don't realise, is this was a device that was used in Scotland to actually make young people leave public spaces, which isn't a really good thing to do. But also around, issues around providing free period products for young women in Scotland. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you to YouthLink Scotland for hosting this convention and inviting me to be part of the conversation on a right to youth work. I've really enjoyed listening to the range of speakers throughout the day, who've all provided insightful presentations, and I suppose really reinforced a lot of the arguments on why a right to youth work in Scotland is inevitable. As the chair's mentioned, my name's Eireann McAuley, and I work with the Scottish Trade Union Congress as an Equality and Policy Officer. So every day I have the privilege of being part of supporting, learning from and helping to advance the rights and views of LGBTQ+, women, Black, disabled and young workers in Scotland. And before the STUC, I actually trained to be a modern studies and history teacher. And unfortunately, due to the lack of stable job opportunities in that profession, I didn't follow that route. But I do believe strongly that teaching, learning and education is about so much more than a classroom in a curriculum-based setting. And equally, protecting, advancing and promoting the rights, views, welfare, well-being and the lives of all children and young people in Scotland should be a responsibility for us all. The immeasurable role that youth work and youth services play in tackling inequalities and injustice, empowering communities and ensuring that all children and young people can thrive and live happy, safe, healthy, sustainable lives shouldn't be underestimated. And the chair has mentioned that today is my 24th birthday, and thanks for everybody putting their wee comments in there. And my friends think I'm absolutely bonkers that I'm spending my birthday afternoon here at a policy convention whilst the sun is out and I could be in the pub. But the reality is that I don't know if I would be here or see my 24th birthday. And I certainly wouldn't be where I am today or as confident or as resilient if it wasn't for the impact of youth work and youth services and some very special teachers of my own as well. Because I suppose, like many young people, my relationship with school, although I went on to be a school teacher, my relationship with school wasn't always great. My attendance was patchy throughout my life, and my engagement until my senior phase was poor. But I was always streetwise, and I loved hanging about the streets and causing havoc and playing football. And I'd probably self-describe myself as gallus. And if you're not Scottish, then I'm not even going to try and explain what that term means. But maybe someone else will. And my own youth workers in North Ayrshire Council, and I know Donna Anderson's on the call today as well, they played a very important interventionist role during a very personal, challenging time for me. And it wasn't until I trained to be a teacher, and even now as I'm kind of still growing up, that I really fully understood how much they did help and how important youth work was on my life and my friends' lives as well. And when I got involved in youth work, I was living a very dysfunctional life. I was experiencing estrangement. I was homeless at the time. I was living in temporary accommodation, and I was predicted to fail my exams. And to be honest, I was on the brisk of going down quite a unsettling and bad path if I chose to pursue that. But what youth work and education gave me was an opportunity to channel some of that anger and pain and energy into something good, and essentially help me find the tools to transform my life and fight for my rights and my pals' rights, and my right to be cared for and to be supported and to be heard. And it gave me the opportunity to be empowered and use my voice and discover and utilise young people's rights, and crucially be involved more in my community as well. And again, what youth work gave me was this opportunity to discover opportunities that I didn't even know existed. And for the first time, you know, like many young people, I felt listened to and valued and supported, and, you know, aspirations were never too ambitious. And most importantly, as some people have touched on today through their presentations, you know, like some of my school teachers and my youth workers made me feel, you know, loved and were the only kind of safe and stable people for a period of time in my life that were there for me, or that I could depend on. And although I've always been quite political, I never really understood what politics was. I didn't understand how decisions were made or how these decisions impacted the lives of young people. And although there was all these frameworks around me and all these terminologies and all these words that you would see at school or in the community, I didn't really understand what they meant, and what they meant for me and what they meant for young people. And you know, I had even been in numerous children's panels, and it was like a passive experience sometimes. Whereas when I got involved in youth work, I started to kind of understand what these frameworks were, and, you know, not just a sort of lecture about your rights, but how can you actually put your rights into action. And, you know, that for me is just so important about how valuable youth work is. And as the chair said as well, you know, I've been involved in a whole host of campaigns over the past couple of years. But there's one campaign that I always do remember, and it was around the mosquito, this concept of the mosquito device. And I remember it for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons that it was in place was because a lot of folk that I knew, including myself, were hanging about a shopping centre. And I remember that I was just raging that the management of this shopping centre openly admitted that they put this device in place to keep young people out. And I remember thinking to myself, can you imagine if a device was put in place to keep a certain gender or a certain race or a certain religious, you know, following outside a public space? You know, there would be absolute upheaval. But for everybody else, and for lots of adults, it was just seen as, yeah, that tool is acceptable, you know, that is going to solve antisocial behaviour. And for us, I just felt like, as I said, I felt a source of rage that how could this happen? And when I spoke to my youth services about it, you know, there was an encouragement for us to campaign to change it, and to challenge the council and to challenge the management and to take on a campaign. And the reason that campaign strikes me is because, you know, they didn't see, you know, there was an encouragement to go and fight for your rights. It wasn't a case of, oh, you know, I think you better be a little bit careful here, or you might not, you know, you might don't want to rock the boat, or, you know, whatever. There was encouragement of, yeah, go and do it. And, you know, I suppose for once in my life, I felt like, you know, youth services and the youth workers that we had didn't see us as BAMs, and they didn't see us as write-offs, and they didn't see us as young people with no ambition, and they didn't see us, you know, as trouble. You know, what they seen was young people who had purpose and who needed support, and who were bored and who were fed up, and who needed, you know, who some of us had no boundaries or no structure in our lives, and who just wanted to be loved and have a laugh. And I always remember that it made me feel like, you know, imagine we had more youth workers actually tapping into young people and haven't been able to speak to them and been able to build those relationships. You know, what a better world we would have. And yeah, that campaign, I'll always just remember that for the concept of why youth work was important, and that encouragement. And also because it helped me become a lot more political as well. And again, kind of following on for that as well, I didn't know what the Children's Parliament and Youth Parliament and all these kind of things were. And I certainly didn't think it was like an organisation that was for kind of people like myself or my friends. And it was youth services and youth work in collaboration with education that exposed these opportunities to us and gave us the kind of encouragement to go and stand and to do that. And, you know, I loved my time in the Youth Parliament, and it would not have been possible without North Ayrshire Youth Council and youth services. And it helped me to just, yeah, be a more confident person and understand, you know, politics and how to utilise my right and take on campaigns, and has absolutely helped me to be where I am now. And even at university, you know, I suppose I went from a situation where I was quite dependent on my school and quite dependent on my youth workers. And then all of a sudden I went to university, and that support mechanism almost was non-existent. And I remember that, you know, I had to come back to my youth workers to ask for help during a period of time where, you know, when your loan's cut and you've not got accommodation and there's a gap in the system, and I didn't know who was responsible for me. And again, that kind of journey that is just so important of why youth work is important. And I suppose for me, when we think about security, you know, that's just one small example of a glimmer of hope and the real impact that youth workers can have on young people's lives, and helping them, you know, not just get over barriers, but, you know, sustaining lives beyond, you know, if they move out of their community. And I suppose for me, securing a right to youth work is not just about, you know, guaranteeing a delivery of youth work service to young people, but it should be about ensuring that the youth work sector is valued, it's recognised, it's properly resourced and equipped with the tools that it needs to continue to survive and provide life-changing opportunities and interventions for thousands of children and young people in their communities. Because I just always think in my experience, and, you know, mine was a very small kind of experience, and there's people that are doing that every single day, but if the service continues to be stripped, then, you know, we risk not just putting the service at risk, but we risk putting thousands of children's life chances at risk as well. And the combination of decades of austerity, cuts to local budgets, and the ongoing economic and social impacts of COVID and Brexit on young people is just completely devastating. You know, I don't think many of us know life without austerity. That's been our lives for since we've been born, some of us. And, you know, young people are at the receiving end of our communities being eroded, services being slashed, opportunities for young people being tied to budget constraints, and too many young people are caught up in a vicious cycle of low wages, insecure work, exorbitant rents, and are experiencing a mental health, jobs and drug misuse crisis. And I always hear people saying, you know, young people the future, and yeah, that's absolutely true, but young people are also the now and the presently affected. And I think decision makers should be using every resource in their power to support young people in their communities now, and, you know, not just ranting off policy sound bites, but actually showing that young people are the future in their actions and in their budget decision making as well. And, you know, if the Scottish Government and others are serious about tackling an attainment gap, mitigating poverty and inequality, ensuring that the UNCRC is enshrined into practice, meeting young people's rights, supporting young people to become champions in their community, and ensuring that Scotland is coined as one of the best places in the world for children and young people to grow up, then the right to youth work, in my view, and a lot of the trade unions' views, must be part of that. Because I think we see an issue in society, we see an ill in society and we think, oh, we'll just stick that in the curriculum for excellence and that will tackle it. You know, we'll let the teachers in the schools tackle that issue. And of course, I don't think anyone here doubts that educational establishments have an important role to play, but it's ludicrous to suggest or think that schools and teachers alone will solve all of these ills that are facing young people and should be solely responsible for getting it right for every child and closing the attainment gap and protecting and promoting young people's rights. You know, youth workers, as has been well documented, play such a significant role in the lives of children and young people, but they are under-resourced and undervalued and overstretched. And some youth services and youth workers are even at breaking point. And if youth workers as a profession is not respected or valued in line with other professions, you know, like teaching, then at the end of the day, it's the young people in our communities and the future of Scotland that suffer. And I think I'd just like to say as well that whilst, you know, me personally and the STUC as an organisation as well, we absolutely support and advocate the right to youth work and the opportunity to strengthen youth work. But I don't think we should become complacent. You know, we all know that you can have the best policy frameworks in the world and law on paper, but that doesn't actually guarantee it will be respected or implemented. So we cannot have a successful right to youth work without a right to decent, well-paid, secure and stable jobs for youth workers and the advancement of youth work as a career profession. We can't have a successful right to youth work without well-funded, resourced and equipped local authorities and local community budgets, which continue to be slashed. And we cannot have a successful right to youth work unless there's a guarantee of consistency of funding so that youth workers can focus on building those relationships in the community, expanding opportunities and truly supporting young people rather than being stressed or feeling like they're in constant competition with other people and other local authorities about resources and funding. And we cannot have a successful right to youth work without the voices and involvement of young people shaping its development and hopefully leading its implementation. And I suppose as well, we can't have a successful right to youth work without its value being fully recognised. You know, joint up thinking and working collaboratively and innovatively across services is so important, but that can't come at the cost of youth services being diluted and the continued risk of dismantling of youth work and opportunities for young people. And it certainly can't be seen, as sometimes it is, as a sort of add-on or an addition or an afterthought. You know, that has to change. And the voluntary relationship of young people and youth work is again so important. And every youth service will deliver, you know, its own activities and opportunities differently to meet the needs of that community and those young people. And that should always be respected, especially if a right to youth work becomes a reality. However, you know, every single young person deserves the opportunity to be part of youth work and be part of a resource service and opportunities and programmes. And we can't have, you know, this local authority providing that and that local authority providing that, you know, and that local authority is struggling and those young people not having as much opportunities. You know, that there has to be an equitable right to youth work. There has to be an equitable opportunity to be involved across the board. And I do believe that a right to youth work could do that and guarantee that.